In our small town of Willow Creek, my father was a living legend. At the annual 4th of July parade, he'd lead the community choir with a voice that could make strangers tear up. At parent-teacher conferences, he'd charm every teacher with his quick wit and polished suits. Neighbors called him the perfect family man, always ready with a joke or a helping hand. But the moment the front door of our 2-story colonial home clicked shut, the mask fell away. Inside those walls, he was a dictator, ruling my mother, my 3 siblings, and me with a set of rules that felt like chains tightening with every breath. His rules were absurd, designed to control rather than protect. We couldn't touch the thermostat, locked at a frigid 60 degrees year-round. Because he said discomfort built resilience. Our phones were confiscated at 6 p.m. sharp, stacked in a locked box he kept in his study. The worst rule, though, was about the shed in our backyard, a rusted, padlocked structure he visited every night. Asking about it was forbidden, a line none of us dared cross. Breaking these rules didn't earn you a shout or a slap. Dad was too clever for that. Instead, he'd make us stand in the corner holding a stack of old dictionaries for hours, our legs trembling until we collapsed. If he was in a darker mood, he'd demand a handwritten letter, 1,000 words minimum, detailing our failures as members of the Harper family. Each letter had to be read aloud at dinner. Our shame laid bare for everyone to witness. I was 17. The second youngest, caught in the middle of this suffocating world. My younger sister, Lila, was 10, a quiet girl with a mischievous streak that flickered like a candle in a storm. She was my reason to keep going, the one I swore to protect no matter what. My older siblings, Ethan and Clara, were shadows of themselves, worn down by years of obedience. Ethan, 19. Hid behind sarcasm, his eyes always scanning for an exit. Clara, 21, buried herself in books, dreaming of a life beyond Willow Creek. Mom was a wraith, her once vibrant spirit dulled by Dad's constant control. She'd nod along to his rants, her eyes distant, as if she'd checked out of her own life. Lila was different. She'd slip me an extra slice of bread when Dad cut my meals as punishment, or hide a doodle of a smiling sun under my pillow to cheer me up. We had a secret language winks across the dinner table, a tap on the wrist to say, "I'm here." I thought we were unbreakable, a team against the tyranny of our father. But one humid August evening, everything changed. We were at dinner, the air thick with the scent of roasted chicken and unspoken tension. The only sounds were the clink of silverware and the hum of the air conditioner Dad refused to turn off. Lila, usually so careful, looked up from her plate and asked, "Dad, what's in the shed? I saw you go in there last night with a guy in a fancy car." The words hung in the air like a grenade with the pin pulled. My fork froze halfway to my mouth, my heart slamming against my ribs. Ethan coughed, spilling water, while Clara's eyes widened in panic. Mom's hands gripped her napkin so tightly her knuckles turned white. Dad's face didn't change, but his eyes, those cold, gray eyes, locked onto Lila. "You don't need to know," he said, his voice low, each word a warning. Lila, oblivious to the danger, pushed further. "But I could help. I'm good at sorting things. Like my school projects." I wanted to scream at her to stop, but my voice was gone, swallowed by fear. Dad stood, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor. The sound like nails on a chalkboard. I thought he'd yell, maybe send her to the corner. But he just stared, his silence more terrifying than any shout. Then, without a word, he grabbed Lila's arm, yanking her from her seat. I acted before I thought, lunging across the table, knocking over glasses to shove her behind me. "Don't touch her," I shouted, my voice cracking. His hand came down hard, a slap across my cheek that sent me stumbling. The sting was sharp, but the humiliation burned worse. "Stay out of this, Caleb," he growled, his face inches from mine. Before I could respond, he dragged me to the garage, shoving me inside and locking the door. Through the grimy window, I watched as he pulled Lila to the living room, his belt already unbuckled. Her cries echoed through the house, each one a dagger in my chest. Ethan and Clara vanished to their rooms, their footsteps quick and cowardly. Mom stood frozen, her hands wringing, her eyes fixed on the floor. I pounded on the door until my fists were raw, screaming for him to stop. But no one came. Lila's sobs grew quieter, and I sank to the cold concrete, my breath hitching. By 4:30 p.m., I was on the phone with Child Protective Services, my hands shaking as I dialed from the neighbor's backyard. Hidden behind their hedge, I spilled everything: the rules, the punishments, the shed, the fear that clung to us like damp rot. The woman on the line was kind, her voice steady as she promised my call would stay anonymous. She said they'd investigate. That help was coming. I believed her, clinging to that hope like a lifeline. It was the biggest mistake I'd ever make. The next morning, a social worker arrived, her sensible shoes clicking on our porch. Dad greeted her with his public face warm, charming, the perfect father. He offered her tea, spun a story about his lively kids and their overactive imaginations. Within 10 minutes, she'd betrayed me, casually mentioning that Caleb called yesterday with concerns. Dad's smile didn't falter, but his eyes found mine, a promise of retribution flickering in them. The social worker apologized for the misunderstanding and left, her car disappearing down the street. That night, Dad's punishment was merciless. The belt came down again and again, each strike a reminder of my failure. I curled up on my bed afterward, my body aching, my mind a fog of pain and betrayal. Around midnight, Lila slipped into my room, her silhouette small in the doorway. I expected a hug, a whispered, "I'm sorry." Instead, she leaned close and whispered, "You shouldn't have snitched on Daddy." She left without looking back, and something inside me shattered. Lila's whispered words, "You shouldn't have snitched on Daddy," cut deeper than the welts on my back. She'd been my partner, my light in the suffocating darkness of our home, the one who'd sneak me a cookie when Dad starved me for breaking his rules. Now, she was his spy, her eyes darting to him at every meal, reporting my every misstep. If I lingered too long in the hallway, she'd tell him I was sneaking around. If I whispered to Ethan about homework, she'd claim I was plotting. Ethan and Clara piled on, their punishments harsher now, as if they were competing for Dad's approval. Ethan once shoved me against the wall for looking at him wrong, his eyes cold with fear of becoming the next target. Clara would smirk when Dad made me stand in the corner, her silence louder than any taunt. The house wasn't a home anymore, it was a battlefield. Every glance a potential ambush. I stopped talking, my words locked away like our phones in Dad's box. Silence was my shield, the only way to protect myself from their betrayal. I found refuge in the attic, a cramped, dusty space above the garage, reachable only by a creaky pull-down ladder. The air was thick with the scent of old wood and mothballs. The floor littered with boxes of Mom's old dresses and forgotten photo albums. A single bulb hung from the rafters, casting long shadows over a broken radio I pretended to fix. It was a lie, a cover for my real work. Up here, away from Dad's rules and Lila's watchful eyes, I could breathe, even if the air was stale. The attic became my sanctuary, the one place where his presence didn't linger like a storm cloud. Lila's betrayal wasn't just anger, it was fear. I saw it in the way her hands trembled when she reported me, the way her eyes flicked away when I caught her staring. She wasn't the defiant girl who'd once drawn me silly pictures. She was a puppet, dancing on Dad's strings. That realization hurt worse than the belt marks fading on my skin. Ethan and Clara were too far gone, their spirits bent under years of Dad's control. But Lila, she was only 10. I still believed I could save her, even if it meant sacrificing everything else. Dad hated my silence. It unnerved him, stole the control he craved. He was used to breaking us with words, making us beg for forgiveness until our voices cracked. My refusal to speak took that power away, and he couldn't stand it. So he made a new rule, just for me. Before every meal, I had to stand and list 3 things I admired about him. If I didn't, I wouldn't eat. The first time he announced it, the dining room went still, the air heavy with anticipation. Ethan stared at his plate. Clara's fork paused mid-bite, and Lila's eyes were fixed on Dad, waiting for my move. My stomach growled. I'd already gone a day without food for disrespecting him by not smiling at breakfast. The thought of praising him made bile rise in my throat. But hunger was a powerful enemy. I stood, my chair scraping against the floor, the sound sharp in the silence. I looked him in the eye, my voice flat. I admire how you lie to everyone in Willow Creek. I admire how you make Mom cry when no one's looking. I admire how you think you'll get away with it forever. The room froze. Ethan's glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the table. Mom's breath hitched, and Lila's eyes widened, a flicker of guilt crossing her face. Dad's face turned a dangerous shade of red. His jaw clenched so tight I thought his teeth would crack. "Out," he said, pointing to the door. I walked to my room, my stomach empty but my resolve intact. I went 2 more days without food before hunger won. At the next dinner, I mumbled, "I admire your work ethic," and sat down, his smug smile burning into me. He thought he'd broken me, but I was just biding my time. In the attic, I started documenting everything. I'd saved lunch money for weeks, skipping meals to buy a disposable camera from the drugstore. I hid it in a hollowed-out encyclopedia, one of the few books Dad hadn't burned after the CPS call. Every bruise, every mark. I captured in grainy photos Ethan's swollen wrist from a fall after talking back, Clara's tear-streaked face after a night locked in the bathroom, Mom's split lip she swore was from a clumsy accident. I scratched a timeline into the attic beams with a rusted nail, each entry a testament to our suffering. August 20th. Lila. Hit for spilling milk. August 25th. Ethan locked out overnight for missing curfew. September 3rd. Mom's arm bruised. Said she bumped a cabinet. The photos and carvings were my evidence. My promise that one day, I'd make him pay. One evening, I saw Lila sneaking across the backyard toward the shed. Dad was at one of his community meetings, the kind where men in expensive suits arrived in sleek cars, their voices low and urgent. The shed's lock was undone. A rare mistake. Lila slipped inside, her small figure swallowed by the shadows. I crept closer, hiding behind the oak tree, my heart pounding. Through a crack in the door, I saw her open a small metal box, her hands shaking as she pulled out a locket. She opened it, staring at a tiny photo inside, her fingers tracing its edges. Tears streamed down her face, and she clutched it to her chest before shoving it into her pocket and running back to the house. Later, I checked the trash can in her room while she was at school. The locket was there, crumpled among tissues and pencil shavings. Inside was a photo of a woman who looked like Mom, but younger, happier, her smile real. She held a baby I didn't recognize, their faces glowing with a joy I'd never seen in our house. I didn't know who they were, but I knew it was important. I slipped the locket into my pocket, hiding it in the attic with my camera. It was a piece of a puzzle I didn't yet understand, but it felt like a key to something bigger than Dad's rules. I started watching Lila closer. Her reports to Dad weren't gleeful anymore. They were mechanical, her voice flat, her hands fidgeting. At dinner, when she told him I'd been hiding in the attic, her eyes darted to me, full of guilt. She wasn't loyal to him, she was terrified. He'd manipulated her, probably with promises of love or small privileges, only to pull them away when she wasn't useful. I knew that game, we all did. It was how he kept us in line, dangling affection like bait before yanking it back. I made a silent vow. I'd get Lila out, even if it meant tearing our family apart. The locket, the photos, the carvings, they were my weapons. I just had to figure out how to use them. Lila's betrayal turned our home into a minefield. Every step a risk of explosion. She watched me like a hawk, her small frame tense with the weight of Dad's expectations. If I took an extra helping of potatoes, she'd whisper to him, and I'd lose dinner for a week. If I lingered in the attic too long, she'd report I was hiding secrets, earning me another hour with the dictionaries. Ethan and Clara were no better. Their loyalty to Dad, a mix of fear and desperation for his rare praise. Ethan once pinned me against the kitchen wall, his breath hot with anger, accusing me of making things worse after I forgot to lock the phone box. Clara's silence was worse. She'd watch my punishments with a blank stare, her books a shield against guilt. I was alone, my silence the only weapon I had left. But I wasn't giving up. Lila was still in there, the girl who'd once tapped my wrist to say she was with me. I just had to reach her. And to do that, I needed allies. Ethan was my best shot. At 19, he was the middle child, always overshadowed by Clara's academic achievements and Dad's favoritism toward her. He carried a quiet resentment, visible in the way his shoulders slumped when Dad praised Clara's college applications, but ignored his own efforts. I knew he was cracking under the pressure, and I could use that. One September evening, I found him in the backyard, hidden behind the shed, vaping in the fading light. The sweet scent of mango hung in the air, a forbidden act in Dad's rigid world. I could have ratted him out. Dad would have made him write a 2,000-word essay on disobedience, but I saw an opportunity. "Can I try?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. Ethan froze, his eyes wide with suspicion, then handed me the vape. I took a drag, the flavor sharp on my tongue, and we stood there, rebels in the twilight. "Ever wonder what's in the shed?" I said, exhaling a cloud. Ethan's jaw tightened. "Dad'd kill me if I looked?" "You know that." I didn't push. Not yet. Over the next week, I chipped away at him, catching him alone in the garage or on the back porch. Weird how Dad's always got cash, but no one knows what he does. I'd say, or, "Clara gets new clothes, but you're stuck with my old sneakers." Each comment was a seed, planted to grow doubt. Ethan started opening up, his sarcasm giving way to quiet confessions. He'd overheard Dad on the phone, yelling in a language he didn't recognize. Something about moving the funds. One night, as we sat on the porch steps, fireflies blinking in the darkness, he admitted he'd quit soccer in high school because Dad said it was a waste of time. "I was good," he said, his voice cracking. "Could have gone to state. But Dad said it wasn't practical." I saw the hurt in his eyes, the same hurt I felt when Dad burned my sketchbooks after the CPS call. I made him an offer. "I know how to get into the shed," I said. "Show me proof Dad's hiding something, and I'll get you in." Ethan hesitated, his fingers tapping nervously on his knee. Then he pulled out his phone and played a video, the audio shaky but clear. It was Dad, screaming at Mom in their bedroom. "You question me again. You'll end up like Marie, gone for good. Mom's sobs followed, muffled as if she was hiding her face. The video cut off with a crash, something breaking against a wall. I felt a chill, not just from the threat, but from the name Marie. The woman in the locket. Deal, I said. That night, while Dad was at a charity event, we crept to the shed. I'd watched Dad enough to know he hid the key under a loose brick by the garden. The lock clicked open, and we slipped inside, the air heavy with the smell of oil and metal. In the dim glow of Ethan's phone flashlight, we found stacks of cash bundled in rubber bands, a box of fake IDs with names I didn't recognize, and a leather-bound ledger filled with columns of numbers and cryptic initials. Tucked inside the ledger was a crumpled letter, addressed to no one, with a single line, "Marie left for good. Don't follow." My hands shook as I snapped photos with my camera, the flash harsh in the darkness. Ethan's face was pale. "This is bad, Caleb," he whispered. "Really bad." We locked the shed and hid the key, my heart pounding with the weight of what we'd found. The next day, at the town's community picnic, I saw my chance to push harder. Dad was in his element, shaking hands with neighbors, his smile wide as he handed out lemonade. Lila, sitting beside him, looked small and nervous. I caught her eye, nodding slightly, our old signal. She hesitated, then stood, her voice loud enough for the crowd to hear. "Daddy, why don't we ever visit Aunt Marie?" The picnic went quiet, forks pausing, eyes turning to Dad. His smile froze, a crack in his perfect facade. Kids and their questions. He laughed, but it sounded hollow. I stood, my voice steady. "Yeah, Dad, what's in the shed? You're always out there with those guys in suits." A murmur rippled through the crowd, neighbors exchanging glances. Dad's hand tightened on his cup, but he couldn't act, not with Willow Creek watching. That night, he was furious, his eyes wild as he paced the living room. "You think you're clever?" he hissed at me, his voice low so the neighbors wouldn't hear through the open windows. He didn't touch me, not with the town's eyes still fresh in his mind, but his rage was a living thing, coiling around us. Lila watched from the stairs, her hands clenched, her eyes flickering with something new doubt. I knew then that she wasn't fully his anymore. The shed, the locket, the letter. They were pieces of a truth he couldn't hide forever. I just had to keep pushing, keep collecting, until his world came crashing down. The picnic had shaken Dad, his perfect smile faltering under Willow Creek's watchful eyes. He doubled down at home, his rules tightening like a noose. He installed motion sensor cameras in the living room and kitchen, claiming they were for security. I'd learned enough from YouTube tutorials at the school library to disable them, snipping wires in the dead of night and leaving sticky notes on the lenses. "We see you." Each note was a small victory, a crack in his control. But it wasn't enough. Lila's doubt at the picnic was a spark, and I needed to fan it into a flame before Dad snuffed it out. I kept documenting in the attic, my sanctuary of dust and secrets. My camera captured every mark Lila's bruised arm from dropping a plate, Ethan's split knuckle from tripping in the garage, Mom's shadowed eyes after a late-night argument. I scratched new dates into the beams. September 20th. Clara locked in her room for texting a friend. September 25th. Mom's wrist sprained. Said she fell down the stairs. October 2nd. Lila hit for asking about the shed again. The photos and carvings were my lifeline, proof that this wasn't just a nightmare I'd wake up from. Lila was slipping away from Dad's grip, her reports less frequent, her eyes lingering on me with guilt. I caught her in the hallway one night, slipping a note into my pocket, a drawing of a sun with sorry scrawled across it. I didn't trust her yet, But it was a start. I needed more allies. And Ethan was my foothold. His confession about the soccer team and the video of Dad's threats had bonded us. A fragile trust built on shared rebellion. I kept pushing, dropping hints about the shed's contents cache, fake IDs, the letter about Marie. What if it's not just us he's hurting? I'd say, watching his face darken with doubt. Our chance came at the town's church harvest festival, a Willow Creek tradition where Dad played the benevolent patriarch, handing out pies and shaking hands. Lila sat beside him, her hands folded tightly in her lap. I gave her our old signal, a double wink, and she nodded, almost imperceptibly, as Dad addressed the congregation, thanking them for their support. Lila stood, her voice clear. "Daddy, what's in the shed? You're always in there with those men." The church went silent, hymnals frozen in hands, eyes darting to Dad. His smile twitched, a crack in his armor. I stood, my heart pounding. "Yeah, Dad, why's it locked? What are you hiding?" A woman in the front pew, Mrs. Larson, raised an eyebrow, her glance lingering on Dad. The pastor cleared his throat, moving on quickly. But the damage was done. Whispers followed us out, the town's gossip machine starting to churn. Dad's rage was controlled but lethal that night. He didn't touch us, not with the church's eyes fresh in his mind. But his voice was a blade. "You're testing me," he hissed, pacing the living room. "You think you can embarrass me in front of Willow Creek?" Lila shrank into the couch, but her eyes met mine, a flicker of defiance returning. I knew we were close to breaking him, but we needed more. I took Ethan back to the shed one night when Dad was at another meeting. The key was still under the brick. A careless oversight. Inside, we found the cash and IDs untouched, but I noticed a loose floorboard under the workbench. Prying it open, we found a hidden compartment with a burner phone and a small notebook. The phone's call log showed encrypted numbers, all international. The notebook listed dates and payments, names like Victor and Dimitri next to sums in the thousands. My hands shook as I photographed everything, the flash illuminating Ethan's wide eyes. "He's not just a control freak," Ethan whispered. "This is criminal." We replaced the board, locked the shed, and hid the key, our secret heavier than ever. To spread doubt, I started leaving anonymous notes around town, not just in mailboxes, but in church pews, library books, even the community board at the diner. The Harper family isn't what it seems. Ask James Harper about his shed. The notes were vague, untraceable, but they worked. At the grocery store, neighbors avoided Dad's handshake. At the library, the librarian gave him a tight smile when he donated books. Willow Creek was watching, and Dad knew it. The turning point came at the town diner, where Dad hosted a lunch for his business associates, men in tailored suits with hard eyes and heavy accents. Lila and I were there, forced to play the perfect family. Mom served coffee, her hands unsteady, while Clara and Ethan stayed home, claiming illness. As Lila passed a tray, she tripped, splashing coffee across one man's suit. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice too sweet. It was an accident, like when Daddy gets mad and breaks things. The diner went quiet, forks pausing mid-air. The man's face reddened, his wife dabbing at the stain, avoiding eye contact. Dad laughed, a hollow sound. "Kids, always clumsy," he said, but his eyes burned with fury. "Lila, tell them about the shed's storage," he added, his voice tight. Lila blinked, then said, "Oh, the shed where you keep the secret stuff." The associates exchanged glances, one muttering something in a language I didn't understand. Dad's smile vanished, his hand gripping Lila's shoulder hard enough to make her wince. I saw Mom slip into the diner's back room, her phone pressed to her ear. I followed, pretending to need a napkin, and overheard her whispering, "Yes, I have the documents. Can we meet tomorrow?" She hung up when she saw me, her eyes sharp with something new resolve. I didn't ask, but I knew she was talking to a lawyer, maybe about divorce, maybe about more. It was the first sign she wasn't completely broken. That night, Dad dragged Lila to the living room, his belt in hand. I shouted for Ethan, who burst in, blocking the doorway. "Let her go," he said, his voice steady despite the fear in his eyes. Clara appeared, her books abandoned, her voice shaking but firm. "We're done." "Dad." Mom stepped forward, her phone in hand. "I called the police," she said quietly, her shoulders squared for the first time in years. Dad looked at us, his family, united against him, and his face contorted with rage and something else. Fear. He dropped Lila's arm and stormed out, his car screeching down the street. We gathered in the living room. No Dad. No cameras. Mom admitted she'd been talking to a lawyer, someone Aunt Marie had connected her with. Ethan played his video of Dad's threats, the audio chilling in the quiet room. I showed my photos, the ledger copies, the burner phone's call log. Clara confessed she'd been saving money from her waitressing job to leave after graduation. Even William, Dad's shadow, admitted he'd been hit once, his loyalty crumbling under the weight of truth. We talked until dawn, our voices raw, our secrets spilling like water from a broken dam. For the first time, we weren't just surviving, we were fighting. The night we stood against Dad changed everything. His screeching tires left black marks on our driveway, but his absence didn't bring peace. The house felt like a fortress under siege, every creak a warning. Mom had the locks changed by noon the next day. The locksmith's drill, a steady hum as we watched from the porch. Ethan boarded up the downstairs windows, his hammer strikes echoing our resolve. Clara kept Lila close, teaching her a coded signal: 2 knocks for safe, 3 for danger. I carved one last entry into the attic beams. October 5th. Dad left. Family united. My photos, Ethan's video, the shed's ledger, and the burner phone were hidden in a locked box under my bed. Our arsenal against him. Willow Creek buzzed with rumors. Mrs. Larson, the neighbor who'd raised an eyebrow at the church festival, stopped by with a casserole and a knowing look. "You're brave, Caleb," she said quietly, slipping me a folded note. It was a photo of Dad's car parked near the town's edge, time-stamped 2 days ago. "I sent this to your mom's lawyer," she whispered. I stared, stunned. Mrs. Larson, the nosy widow who'd always seemed harmless, was watching Dad for us. It was the first sign we weren't alone. A week later, Dad returned, not with police, but with a lawyer in a sleek suit, his briefcase gleaming under the morning sun. He stood on our porch, pounding the door, demanding entry. "This is my house," he shouted, his voice carrying to the neighbors peeking through curtains. Mom opened the door, her face calm but her hands steady. "You're not welcome here, James," she said, holding up a restraining order she'd filed with her lawyer's help. The lawyer smirked, handing her a document claiming Dad's right to the property. I watched from the stairs, Lila's hand in mine, her fingers trembling. Ethan stood behind Mom, his jaw set, ready to step in. Mom didn't flinch. "Take it to court," she said, slamming the door. She drove us to the police station that afternoon, her evidence in a folder, my photos, Ethan's video, copies of the ledger, and a new piece, a recorded call from the burner phone I'd found in the shed. I'd never heard it, but Mom's eyes were fierce as she handed it over. "He threatened to hurt us," she told the officer, her voice unwavering. "This proves it." The officer listened, his face grim, and promised to escalate the case. Dad's lawyer left town that evening, his car tailed by Mrs. Larson's watchful eye. But Dad didn't stop. On October 10th, I found a note slipped into my locker at school, written in his sharp handwriting. "I'm always watching." My stomach dropped, the hallway blurring as I scanned for his face. I showed it to Mom, who called the police, but they said it wasn't enough, too vague. No direct threat. Ethan suggested we leave Willow Creek, and Mom agreed, contacting Aunt Marie, whose name kept surfacing like a ghost from our past. Marie offered her coastal cottage, 8 hours away, a place Dad had never been. We spent the next month preparing. Our lives, a blur of packing and paranoia. We used coded signals, checked windows obsessively, and never went anywhere alone. Lila stuck to me like a shadow, her drawings now of waves and shells, a silent promise to rebuild what we'd lost. The move came after a sleepless night, prompted by another note, this one left on our mailbox. Reading, "You can't hide." Mom didn't wait for her boss's approval. She called from the road, explaining we were fleeing danger. We drove through the night, the highway a ribbon of black under a starless sky. Ethan kept watch in the rearview mirror. Clara read to Lila to keep her calm, and I clutched the locked box of evidence, its weight a reminder of why we were running. Aunt Marie's cottage was a weathered haven, tucked among dunes, the air thick with salt and the crash of waves. It felt safe, a world away from Willow Creek's prying eyes. Marie greeted us with warm hugs, her face a mirror of Mom's, but unburdened by years of fear. Her cottage was small, with creaky floors and windows that rattled in the wind. But it was ours. Lila ran to the beach, her laughter a sound I hadn't heard in months. Ethan and Clara unpacked, their shoulders lighter, while Mom and Marie talked in low voices, their heads bent over coffee. I wandered to the guest room, carving a new date into the bed frame. October 20th. We escaped. But escape didn't feel final. Dad's notes lingered in my mind, his shadow stretching across the miles. Mrs. Larson called a week later, her voice hushed over the phone. She'd seen Dad's car near the police station, meeting a man in a black jacket. "I took photos," she said. "Your lawyer has them." Mom's lawyer, a sharp woman named Ms. Carter, was building a case, using our evidence and Mrs. Larson's photos to tie Dad to something bigger, maybe the names in the ledger, maybe the burner phone's calls. Mom revealed she'd recorded Dad months ago, before the diner incident, catching him threatening to erase us if we exposed him. She'd kept it secret, waiting for the right moment. Her quiet strength a revelation. We settled into Marie's cottage, enrolling in a small school where no one knew our history. Lila thrived, her drawings filling the walls. Ethan found a job at a local marina, his sarcasm softening into smiles. Clara applied to colleges, her books now open on the kitchen table. Not hidden. I kept the locked box close, checking it nightly, afraid Dad would find us. His notes, his lawyer, his presence, they were chains we hadn't fully broken. But for the first time, we had a plan, allies, and a mother who wasn't just surviving but fighting. I lay awake at night, the ocean's roar outside, wondering how long our freedom would last. Aunt Marie's cottage was a fragile sanctuary, its walls creaking under the weight of the ocean's roar. The salty air and crashing waves should have felt like freedom, but Dad's shadow followed us, his notes a constant reminder that we hadn't escaped. Lila clung to me, her drawings now of seashells and gulls, but her eyes darted to the windows at night, searching for him. Ethan worked long hours at the marina, his hands calloused from ropes, while Clara buried herself in college applications, her pen scratching late into the night. Mom smiled more, her laughter mingling with Marie's over coffee. But I saw the tension in her shoulders, the way she checked the locks twice before bed. I kept our evidence box under my bed, carving new dates into the bed frame. October 25th. Settled at Marie's. October 28th. Lila laughed again. But peace was a lie, and we all knew it. A week after we arrived, Lila came home from her new school with a small package, wrapped in brown paper. "A man gave this to me at recess," she said, her voice small. "He said it's from Daddy." My heart sank as Mom unwrapped it. A seashell necklace, the kind sold at the pier, with a folded note tucked inside. "Daddy's close." Mom's face paled, but she didn't cry. She called the coastal police station, who checked the school's cameras but found nothing. The man had stayed just off the property. A ghost in the footage. The officer called the necklace unsettling, but not a direct threat, echoing the useless words we'd heard in Willow Creek. Mom took it to the station anyway, her hands steady as she demanded they log it as evidence. I couldn't sleep that night, the note's words looping in my mind. Dad was out there, watching, waiting. I checked the evidence box. The photos and ledger, a grim reminder of what we were up against. Ethan suggested we contact Mrs. Larson, who'd been our unexpected ally in Willow Creek. Mom called her, and within days, Mrs. Larson connected us to Mr. Hayes, a retired detective who lived an hour from Marie's town. "He hates men like your father," she said. "He'll help." We met Mr. Hayes at the pier, the wind whipping through our hair, the horizon a blur of gray and blue. He was a wiry man with a weathered face and kind eyes, his notebook filled with scribbled leads. "Your dad's into offshore accounts," he said, sliding a folder to Mom. "Money moving through fake charities, tied to some rough types from Eastern Europe. The feds are watching them, but they need more to pin him down." The folder contained bank statements, photos of Dad meeting men in dark suits, and a list of shell companies with names like Coastal Ventures. My stomach twisted. Dad's shed wasn't just a secret, it was a front. Mr. Hayes warned us to stay vigilant. "He's desperate," he said. "Men like him don't let go easy." Mom nodded, her jaw tight, and I saw a fire in her eyes I hadn't noticed before. She'd been hiding her own evidence, she admitted later. A second recording from the burner phone, caught weeks before we left Willow Creek. Dad's voice, low and threatening. "If they talk, they're done." She'd sent it to Miss Carter, her lawyer, building a case we didn't even know about. 2 weeks after the necklace, I woke to a faint scratching at the cottage's back gate. It was 3 a.m., the moon casting long shadows across the dunes. I grabbed Ethan, who clutched a tire iron from the marina, and we crept to the window. A figure moved in the darkness. Not Dad, but someone broader, his movements careful. He carved something into the gate, a circle with a slash through it, then vanished into the night. Ethan called the police, but by the time they arrived, the man was gone, leaving only the symbol and fresh scratches on the lock. The officer took photos, his flashlight glinting off the gate, but said it wasn't enough for Ndaibu. "Document everything," he advised. The same tired line. I carved it into the bed frame. November 1st. Gate tampered. Symbol left. Clara found something the next day, tucked in a drawer in Marie's guest room. It was a letter, yellowed with age, addressed to Mom in Marie's looping handwriting. I left him. Sarah. It read, "He tried to break me, but I got out. You can too." Clara read it aloud, her voice shaking, and Mom's eyes filled with tears. Marie nodded from the doorway, her face soft but resolute. I ran 10 years ago, she said. He threatened to ruin me. But I built a life here. You're stronger than you know. Sarah. Mom clutched the letter, her hands trembling. And I realized she'd been fighting in her own way, quietly, for longer than I'd thought. We tightened our defenses. Mom taught us a new signal, 3 whistles for intruder. Ethan slept with the tire iron. Clara kept a flashlight by her bed. And Lila stayed close to me, her necklace untouched in a drawer. I checked the evidence box nightly, adding photos of the Gates symbol and the seashell note. Mr. Hayes called with updates, his voice grim. Your dad's associates are under federal scrutiny, he said. One's talking. Might flip on him. Stay low. The news was a spark of hope, but fear kept us tethered. Dad wasn't just a tyrant, he was connected, his reach stretching across the coast. Lila started sleeping in my room, her small form curled against me, her drawings now of lighthouses, a plea for safety. Ethan and Clara opened up, sharing stories of Dad's cruelty. We'd never voiced Ethan's broken guitar. Clara's hidden diary burned in the backyard. Mom spoke of Marie's escape, how Dad had erased her from our lives, calling her a traitor. The letter, the necklace, the symbol, they were pieces of a puzzle we were still solving. I lay awake, the ocean's rhythm a restless pulse, knowing Dad was out there, his next move a shadow waiting to fall. The seashell necklace had cracked our fragile peace at Aunt Marie's cottage. Its note, Daddy's close, a whisper of the terror we'd fled. The Gates carved symbol lingered like a scar, a warning we couldn't ignore. Lila slept beside me now, her breaths uneven, her drawings of lighthouses a plea for safety. Ethan patrolled the cottage at night, tire iron in hand, while Clara's college applications lay forgotten, her eyes scanning the dunes for threats. Mom and Marie planned in hushed tones, their coffee cups cold as they poured over Ms. Carter's legal updates. I carved into the bed frame. November 5th. Still waiting. The evidence box under my bed grew heavier. Its contents, photos, ledger, burner phone, Gate symbol a lifeline against Dad's shadow. Mr. Hayes called weakly, his voice a steady anchor. The feds are closing in, he said, detailing Dad's ties to offshore accounts funneled through fake charities. They've got wiretaps on his associates. It's only a matter of time. Mom's second recording, Dad's voice threatening to erase us, was now with the FBI. Alongside my photos and Ethan's video, Mrs. Larson sent more photos from Willow Creek. Dad meeting a man in a black jacket. Their faces tense. I felt hope flicker, but fear kept it dim. Dad was a spider, his web stretching across the coast, and we were still caught. A week later, Lila found a package by the cottage's mailbox, wrapped in driftwood and twine. Inside was a hunting knife, its blade glinting, nestled in a crumpled photo of us at the Willow Creek picnic, our faces circled in red ink. Lila dropped it, her scream sharp in the morning air. Mom called the coastal police, who logged it as evidence but called it circumstantial. Ethan's hands shook as he buried the knife in the dunes. The photo burned in Marie's fireplace. I carved. November 12th. Knife delivered. Photo marked. The package wasn't just a threat. It was Dad's promise that he could reach us, no matter where we hid. Lila's guilt over the necklace and her betrayal in Willow Creek boiled over. At a community center event, where Marie had taken us to blend in with the locals, Lila spotted a man she thought was Dad's associate, his jacket matching the one in Mrs. Larson's photos. She slipped away from us, her face set with a reckless determination I hadn't seen since she asked about the shed. I caught her near the parking lot, whispering to Ethan, planning to confront the man. I'll make him tell Dad to stop, she said. her voice fierce but trembling. Ethan grabbed her arm, pulling her back. "You'll get us all hurt," he hissed, his eyes wild with fear. I stepped between them, my heart pounding. "We do this together, Lila, or not at all." She nodded, tears spilling, and we retreated to Marie's car, the man vanishing into the crowd. The incident shook us, but it showed Lila's fire hadn't died. I gave her a new signal, 4 taps on the wrist, for "we fight back." She used it the next day, her small hand steady. Mom noticed, her eyes softening, and I saw her resolve harden. Marie shared more about her escape from Dad, how she'd fled with nothing but a bus ticket and a promise to never look back. "He tried to find me," she said, "but I built a life here. You will too." Mom clutched Marie's hand, her face a mix of gratitude and determination. Then came the beach. I found a note in my jacket. Lila's handwriting. "Meet me by the lighthouse. Urgent." It was dusk, the fog thick, the waves a restless roar. I ran, my sneakers sinking in the sand, fear clawing my chest. At the lighthouse, Dad stepped from the shadows, his face gaunt, his smile cold. "You thought you could run, Caleb," he said, his voice calm, terrifying. The note was a fake he'd forged Lila's hand. Knowing I'd come, I backed away, my eyes scanning for escape. But the beach was empty, the fog swallowing the world. "You're nothing without me," he said, stepping closer, his hand reaching for my shoulder. I shouted, my voice lost in the wind, and ran, my legs burning as I sprinted toward the cottage. Dad didn't chase, his laughter echoing behind me. I burst through the door, gasping, and Mom called the police. They found no trace of him, the fog a perfect cover, but they tightened patrols around Marie's. Ethan held me as I shook, Lila's apologies a soft chant. I carved, November 15th, Dad on beach. Tricked me. The encounter wasn't just a scare, it was Dad's reminder that he could still control us. Even from a distance, Mr. Hayes called 2 days later, his voice urgent. "He's been arrested," he said. We met him at the community center, the room empty except for us. The ocean, a dull roar outside. The feds had set up a sting near the coast, catching Dad on a wiretap discussing money transfers with an undercover agent, his associate's lawyer, facing charges, had turned over documents linking Dad to a network of offshore accounts. They searched his hotel, Mr. Hayes said. Found cash, fake passports, your photos from Willow Creek. The knife's sender, a hired man, had confessed to working for Dad, paid to scare us into dropping the restraining orders. Bail was denied. Dad was a flight risk, his empire crumbling. We sat in stunned silence, the weight of it sinking in. Dad was in jail, his web cut, Mom's recordings, my photos, Ethan's video, Mrs. Larson's vigilance. They'd built a cage he couldn't charm his way out of. Lila clung to me, her tears soaking my shirt. Clara exhaled, her shoulders relaxing for the first time in months. Ethan stared at the floor, his hands clenched, processing a freedom we'd never known. Marie hugged Mom, their laughter soft but real. I felt lighter, but the scars remained. Lila's betrayal, the beach, the knife. We weren't healed, but we were safe. For now, that was enough. Dad's arrest was a door slammed shut, but the echoes of his control lingered in Aunt Marie's coastal cottage. The ocean's roar was our lullaby now, its waves crashing against the cliffs below, a reminder of the freedom we'd fought for. Lila's paintings covered the deck with seascapes of stormy skies and calm tides, her brushstrokes bold but hesitant, like she was still finding herself. Ethan's marina job left him smelling of diesel, his hands steady as he repaired boats, a quiet pride in his work. Clara's college acceptance letter arrived, her smile bright as she read it aloud. The University of Maine, a new horizon. Mom laughed more, her voice mingling with Marie's over morning tea, but her eyes still flicked to the door. Expecting Dad's shadow, I carved into the bed frame. January 10th. We're trying to live. The evidence box stayed under my bed, untouched but heavy, a relic of a war I wasn't sure was over. Adjusting to the coastal town wasn't easy. The high school was small, its halls smelling of salt and old wood. The students curious about the city kids from Willow Creek. I kept quiet. My answers short. But Lila thrived, her art teacher praising her talent. She was invited to show a painting at a local gallery, a seascape of the lighthouse where Dad had ambushed me. "It's for us," she whispered, her hand tapping mine 4 times. Our signal to fight back. The exhibit was a milestone. The gallery packed with locals sipping coffee and murmuring over her work. Lila stood by her canvas, shy but proud, her smile a flicker of the girl she'd been before the shed. I watched from the corner, Mom's arm around me, her pride mixed with worry. Strangers' eyes could hide threats, and we'd learned to trust sparingly. Ethan struggled most. He'd been my ally in Willow Creek, but the weight of his past complicity pressed hard. One foggy evening, we walked to a cliffside lookout, the ocean a gray blur below. "I was part of it," he said, his voice rough. "I told Dad when Clara hid her phone. When you snuck food to Lila, I thought it'd keep us safe." His hands gripped the railing, knuckles white. I didn't judge we'd all survived Dad's rules in our own ways. "You're here now," I said, my shoulder brushing his. He nodded, his eyes wet, the fog swallowing his guilt. I carved it later. January 15th. "Ethan's sorry. We're healing." Mom's divorce was a battle, delayed by Dad's legal tricks from his cell. Meh. Carter, her lawyer, warned us he was pushing for an appeal, claiming the evidence was fabricated. A letter arrived from his lawyer, its words sharp. "James Harper seeks justice for his family's betrayal." Mom burned it in the fireplace, her face fierce. But Lila cried, her fingers tracing the lighthouse painting. "What if he gets out?" she asked. Mom knelt, her voice steady. "He won't. We have the truth." She'd started a photography class at the community center, inspired by my grainy photos from Willow Creek. "You showed me how to capture what matters," she told me, her camera a new weapon. It was a surprise, her creativity blooming where fear once ruled. I found my place at the marina, restoring old boats with Ethan's boss, a gruff man named Tom. The work was hard. My hands blistered from sanding, but each polished hull felt like reclaiming something Dad had stolen. I'd catch Lila watching me from the pier, sketching the boats, her pencil quick and sure. Clara helped her with homework, their laughter a soft hum in the cottage. Marie taught us to cook, her recipes for clam chowder and blueberry pie filling the air with warmth. We were stitching a new life, thread by thread. But the scars remained Lila's nightmares. Ethan's guilt, my flinch at sudden noises. A month later, "Mr. Hayes called, his voice lighter. "The appeal's dead," he said. Feds found more wiretaps, bank records. His associate's lawyer spilled everything for a deal. Dad's sentencing was set for March 2026. A life sentence likely. The knife sender, a hired thug, had named Dad as the mastermind, his confession sealing the case. Mrs. Larson sent a final photo. Dad's old shed in Willow Creek, boarded up. The lock rusted shut. It was over, but not gone. I carved. February 5th. "Dad's done. We're free." We went to the gallery again, Lila's second painting, a sunrise over the dunes drawing a small crowd. Locals asked about our story, their curiosity gentle, and Mom answered with half-truths, protecting us. Ethan stood taller, his marina job now a path to trade school. Clara planned her move to Maine, her books packed with hope. Lila gave me a sketch of the cottage, its windows glowing, a lighthouse in the distance. "For you," she said, her tap on my wrist 4 times. I framed it, hanging it by my bed, a reminder of what we'd survived. Mom's photography class led to a small exhibit, her photos of the coast waves, cliffs, us raw and honest. She caught me staring at one, a shot of me sanding a boat, my face focused. "You're stronger than you know," she said, her hand on my shoulder. I nodded, the weight of the evidence box lighter, though I'd never let it go. Dad's letter, the knife, the beach, they were ghosts. But we were alive. The ocean roared outside, its rhythm steady, and for the first time, I believed we could outlast his shadow. The coastal cottage was home now, its creaky floors and salt-stained windows a testament to our survival. Dad's sentencing in March 2026 was a quiet victory. His life sentence a lock on the cage we'd built with photos, recordings, and courage. The ocean's rhythm soothed us, but his shadow lingered in Lila's cautious glances, Ethan's tense shoulders, Clara's packed bags she couldn't bring herself to move. Mom's photography studio, a small room above the bookstore, was her rebellion, its walls lined with images of waves and us, proof we were more than his victims. I carved into the bed frame, March 15th. Dad's gone. We're still here. The evidence box stayed under my bed, a silent guardian, its weight lighter but ever present. Lila's art was her voice, her seascapes now joined by portraits of the cottage, each stroke a step toward healing. Her school art show in April was a triumph, the gymnasium transformed with student work, her canvas a tidal pool shimmering under dawn, drawing gasps. "It's for Caleb," she said, tapping my wrist 4 times, her smile bright but fragile. Locals clapped, their faces kind, but I scanned for threats, a habit I couldn't shake. Mom stood beside Lila, her camera flashing, capturing the moment. Ethan, in a rare break from the marina, grinned, his pride louder than words. Clara lingered by the exit, her acceptance letter from Maine crumpled in her pocket, her eyes distant. Clara's hesitation was new. She'd planned to leave for college in August, but Dad's sentencing stirred old fears. "What if he gets out somehow?" she asked one night, her voice small over dinner. Mom's fork paused, her face calm but firm. "He won't. Clara. We've made sure." I saw her glance at Marie, a silent acknowledgement of their shared fight. Clara nodded, but her bag stayed unpacked, her books untouched. I wanted to help, but my own fears. Dad's beach ambush. The knife kept me quiet. We were healing, but the wounds were deep, their edges raw. Ethan found purpose mentoring teens at the marina, kids with hard eyes and quick fists, like he'd been under Dad's rule. "They need someone who gets it," he told me, his voice steady as he showed a boy how to tie a knot. His guilt, confessed at the cliffside, was fading, replaced by a quiet strength. He'd enrolled in trade school, his nights spent studying engine manuals, his laughter a sound I'd forgotten. Lila helped him paint a mural on the marina's shed, waves and gulls. No locks, a defiance of Dad's shed in Willow Creek. I found solace at the tidal pools, their shallow worlds of crabs and anemones, a puzzle I could solve. I'd sit for hours, sketching starfish and kelp, my pencil a new way to process the chaos Dad left behind. One morning, a stranger approached, his camera slung over his shoulder. "You're a Harper, aren't you?" he asked, his tone too casual. My heart raced, my sketchbook slamming shut. "Heard about your dad's case. Tough stuff." I mumbled something and left, the tidal pool's calm shattered. Back at the cottage, I told Mom, who checked the locks, her face tight. "We're done hiding," she said, but her voice wavered. The stranger was a journalist, his email arriving days later. Addressed to Mom, he wanted an interview for a piece on Dad's case, calling it a story of resilience. Mom read it aloud, her hands steady, but Lila's eyes widened, her fingers tracing her tidal pool painting. "No one needs to know," she whispered. Ethan agreed, his jaw set. "It's our life, not their story." Clara was silent, her fear of exposure clear. Mom declined the interview, but the email lingered, a reminder that Dad's crimes were public, our pain. A headline waiting to happen. I carved, "April 10th. Journalist asked. We said no. Mom's photography exhibit grew. Her work now sold at the bookstore. The earnings donated to a domestic abuse shelter. "It's for others like us," she said, her camera a shield and sword. Her strength inspired me, her photos of the tidal pools. My tidal pools showing a beauty I'd missed. She caught me sketching one day, her smile soft. "You're an artist too," she said, and I blushed, my pencil pausing. Lila overheard, slipping me a sketch of a crab, her tap on my wrist 4 times. A promise we were in this together. A community beach cleanup brought us closer to the town, our gloves filled with driftwood and plastic. Locals thanked us, their smiles genuine, and I felt a shift. We weren't just the Harpers from the news, we were neighbors. Lila led a group of kids, her laughter bright, while Ethan hauled debris, his strength a quiet apology for his past. Clara joined, her hands tentative but willing, her fear easing with each wave's crash. Mom snapped photos, her lens capturing hope. I stood by the water, my sketchbook tucked away. The ocean's pull. A reminder of our resilience. Clara decided to go to Maine, her bags finally packed after a talk with Marie. "You're not running from him," Marie said. "You're running toward you." Clara hugged her, tears falling, and I felt a pang pride, but also loss. She'd leave, but we'd stay connected. Our signals taps, knocks, whistles a language Dad couldn't touch. I sketched her at the tidal pools, her face fierce, and gave it to her. "For Maine," I said. She smiled, her tap on my wrist 4 times. The journalist didn't write his story, but others might. Dad's name would fade, but our scars wouldn't. Lila's art show, Ethan's kids, Mom's studio, Clara's future. My sketches, they were our defiance, our proof we'd outlasted him. The ocean roared, its tides washing away the past. And I believed, for the first time, that we were enough. Summer 2026 wrapped Aunt Marie's coastal cottage in warmth, the ocean's breeze carrying the scent of seaweed and hope. Dad's life sentence, finalized in March, was a chain broken, but his shadow lingered in our silences, our flinches at loud voices. Lila's art filled the cottage, her seascapes now joined by portraits of us. Ethan's grin, Clara's thoughtful eyes, Mom's steady hands. Ethan's teen sailing program at the marina was his redemption, his voice firm as he taught kids to navigate waves. Clara left for Maine, her dorm room a new chapter, her weekly calls a thread tying us together. Mom's photography studio thrived, her images of the coast in every local shop, a testament to her rebirth. I carved into the bed frame, June 20th. We're whole. The evidence box stayed under my bed, a silent witness. its contents untouched but never forgotten. The Coastal Festival in July was our town's heartbeat. Its pier lined with booths, music drifting over the dunes. Lila ran an art booth. Her canvases, tidal pools, lighthouses, sunrise cliffs drawing crowds. She stood tall, her hair tied back, explaining her work with a confidence I hadn't seen since Willow Creek. "This one's for my family," she said, pointing to a painting of the cottage, its windows glowing. Locals smiled, but a woman in a sun hat paused too long, her voice low. "You're the Harper girl, aren't you?" That trial was something. Lila's smile faltered, her hand tapping mine 4 times. Our fight-back signal. I stepped in, my voice calm. "She's an artist. That's what matters." The woman nodded, moving on, but Lila's eyes stayed wary. I hugged her, the festival's music a shield against the past. Ethan's sailing kids swarmed the booth, their laughter bright, calling him coach. He'd found his place, his guilt from Willow Creek buried under their trust. "They keep me honest," he told me, his eyes on a boy tying a knot. Clara sent a photo from Maine, her dorm room cluttered with books, her smile real. She'd joined a writing group, her stories of survival a quiet defiance of Dad's control. Mom's latest photo, a black and white of Lila painting, hung in the festival's art tent, her signature bold. She'd announced a photo book, Tides of Us, dedicated to Marie. Its pages, our journey from Willow Creek to now. "It's for anyone who's fought," she said, her voice steady, her camera a lighthouse guiding us home. I volunteered for a memorial bench project, a wooden seat on a rocky promontory overlooking the ocean, dedicated to survivors of abuse. We carved messages into its slats. Hope, strength, freedom, each word a stitch in our wounds. I'd sit there, sketching the horizon, the tidal pools. A memory of my quiet hours. One morning, a letter arrived from Dad's prison, addressed to all of us. His handwriting was sharp, unchanged. "I'm sorry. I want to make things right." The words were hollow, a manipulator's plea, but they stirred us. Lila wanted to burn it, her hands shaking. Ethan called it a trick, his voice hard. Clara, on a video call, said to ignore it, her eyes distant. Mom read it silently, her face unreadable, then set it aside. "He doesn't get to decide our peace," she said, but I saw her hesitate, the old fear flickering. I couldn't let it rest. The letter was Dad's last attempt to control us, his voice reaching through bars. I took it to the memorial bench, the ocean's roar drowning my doubts. The group was there, sanding slats, their faces kind but curious. I stood, the letter in hand, my voice steady. "My dad wrote this," I said, holding it up. "He hurt us, controlled us, tried to break us. This is his apology. But it's not for us, it's for him." I read it aloud, each word a weight lifted. "I forgive him, not for him, but for me, for us." I tore it, the pieces scattering into the wind. The group silent, their nods a shared understanding. A woman, a survivor, hugged me, her whisper fierce. "You're free." I carved it later. July 15th. Dad's letter gone. We're free. The festival's closing night was a celebration. Lila's booth sold out, her earnings donated to the bench project, her smile radiant. Ethan led his kids in a sailing demo, their cheers echoing over the water. Mom's photo book launch drew a crowd, her dedication to Marie a tearful moment. Marie hugged her, their laughter a song of survival. I walked to the promontory, the bench finished, its slats gleaming under the stars. My sketchbook held a new drawing, the bench, the ocean, us my own seascape of hope. Lila found me, her hand tapping mine 4 times. "We did it," she said, her voice soft but sure. Back at the cottage, we sat on the deck, the ocean's rhythm, our pulse. Mom's photos, Lila's paintings, Ethan's knots, Clara's letters, my sketches, they were our story, not Dad's. The evidence box stayed, a reminder of our fight, but it didn't define us. Mom planned a trip to visit Clara, her camera ready for new horizons. Ethan enrolled in a boat-building course, his future clear. Lila dreamed of art school, her tidal pools a promise. I kept sketching, the ocean's waves my guide, each line a step toward peace. The bench became our ritual, a place to sit, reflect, heal. Strangers left flowers, their own messages carved beside ours. Dad's name was a whisper, fading with each tide. We were the Harpers, not his victims. Our scars proof of our strength. The ocean roared, its waves endless, and I knew we'd outlast everything his rules, his threats, his shadow. We were free, not just surviving, but living. For now, forever. That was enough.